Our next speaker is Chai Vasarhelyi, and she made a great movie. I'm into rock climbing and mountain climbing, but if you've never seen rock climbing like this, you've never seen mountain climbing like this, she has a great film here made with her co-director Jimmy called Maru. So I'm going to see it Sunday. I think there's some other screenings this weekend. Please welcome to the stage. Where is she? Chai Vasarhelyi. Come on up. Woo!
Was your whole thing about subjects just to throw me under the bus that my subject is actually not here, who I'm also married to, and then he missed his flight this morning because he was climbing, which is what our film is about. Okay. But thank you for mentioning what a bummer it is when your subject isn't here. It makes me feel very warm feelings towards him right now. No. I'm happy. Well, I'm not a rock climber. I'm not a climber at all. And Meru is about... Meru is one of the most sought-after first ascents in the Himalayas. It's different, very different from Everest in that you don't have support necessarily when you climb it. You don't have Sherpas. It's about... I don't know. It's this very sketchy, fluted snow. And then once you reach the top of that, it's a straight wall. It's kind of like if anyone followed the Dawn Wall, what was happening in Yosemite. It's like putting the Dawn Wall on top of Denali. Do people understand this? Maybe. And my husband, who's a co-director of the film, and he's also one of the three subjects of the film. He's a professional climber and a National Geographic photographer, and his name's Jimmy. And he climbed Meru, he attempted Meru with his mentor, Conrad Anker, and with his kind of mentee, Renan Ozturk. And Conrad is one of the greats living today, and his own mentor, Mug Stump, had dreamed of climbing Meru and had tried it 3 times and failed. So Conrad dreamed of climbing Meru and had tried it and then failed. And he invited Renan and Jimmy to attempt it. So in 2008, they set off, and they brought 7 days of food, and they were supposed to be up there for about 7 days. They were there for 18 days and turned around 500 feet from the summit. They could see the summit. I mean, it was very, very close. And meanwhile, unlike, this is the first, I've made a bunch of documentary films. Let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I've made 5 documentary films, and this is the first film I've directed that I wasn't present for the shooting, for obvious reasons. You could not pay me to go on a climb like Meru, nor could I make it. But it's interesting because everything I saw in the edit room and everything I considered, all the scenes I considered, were things that Jimmy and Renan and Conrad brought back with them. So that idea of the scene that got away was always in my imagination. Like, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had this? But we don't. And Meru is the type of climb that you can't reshoot it, and there's no reenactments in the film. It's very special because there were 3 of them, and 2 of them are shooting the whole time, and you kind of don't believe that they're shooting it. You find out quite quickly in the film that they fail spectacularly in 2008. And then they come back, and there is a series of very dramatic events, which leads them to attempt it again in 2011. You can see the film for the rest of it. But this failure in 2008 always fascinated me, and I couldn't... Climbing, I don't know if there are climbers in the room, it's a very understated culture. Like, if you're like, was it hard? They're like, nah, it's fine, And being married to this, it's like infuriating. I'm a New Yorker. I'm used to expression. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a storyteller. I like when people tell me how they feel. Talking to these guys, you didn't get much of how they felt. So we had to work on it for a while. And what happened in 2008, I could never really get my head around. I was like, you were so close. How come you didn't just push a little harder? Well, we would have lost our fingers and toes, Chai. Still, I don't understand. You're already crazy to be out there. What do you mean? What do you mean it was that much more extreme? We were there for 18 days. We were starving, Chai. And it really was this moment where they knew they couldn't survive if they pushed on. And what was so tricky about that situation was they had left their portaledge, which is it's a hanging cot that you attach to the side of the mountain and you sleep on. So they had left it 10 hours of climbing below them. So if they wanted to spend one more night out, it would have been in the cold at 21,000 feet, and they probably would have lost some fingers and toes, or one of them would have made it back. So it's still the way they told the story never really, there's something that escaped me. And then in my re-interviewing of all three of the subjects, of the climbers, it began to emerge more of a story. And first Conrad began talking about how Renan dropped a glove. And if you don't have a glove, you really are going to lose your fingers. But Jimmy remembered it differently, and so did Renan. And they remembered Conrad dropping an ice axe. And that's you bring extra gloves, you don't bring extra ice axes. And Conrad, it was just interesting, because Conrad is this incredibly stoic, incredibly charismatic guy, and a real mentor to both Jimmy and Conrad. And so it was just a very interesting and emotional process of how I excavated the scene of what actually happened, which was they were at the top, they were 500 feet from the top, and Conrad dropped his ice pick. And it was the first time Jimmy, in 10 years of climbing with him, had ever seen him mess up. But this is a scene, you can't talk about it if you haven't shot it. You know, you can't describe, like what I'm telling you, it's interesting, but it's like you can't really show it in a film. So it was always this, I don't know, insightful psychological character moment for Conrad that killed me, that we couldn't include it, because it's not the same if we talk about it. You know, in a film that's so present and you're on the edge, you know, throughout the narrative, we can't just say, like, this really exciting thing happened and we didn't, this really telling thing happened and we didn't shoot it. So you're in this room will know that Conrad dropped his ice tool and no one else will. And it was the scene that got away. So, thank you. And my husband, who's not here. But
Thanks. Good job. I think we did. Great story. That's amazing.